Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into the fascinating evolution of organizational behavior today, specifically decoding how people-centered management actually works. Have you ever wondered why some workplaces feel like a vibrant, thriving community, while others just feel like a soulless machine? Well, today we're pulling from foundational organizational behavior science to figure out exactly why that happens, and, more importantly, how we can build systems that actually respect human dignity while still getting the job done.
We've got a lot of dense academic ground to cover, but here's our roadmap. First up, why do we work? Second, the behavior modification trap. Third, production versus people management. Fourth, building people-centered cultures. And finally, networking and organizational alignment. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Why do we work? The foundations of organizational behavior. To really understand how to manage people, we first have to understand the multidisciplinary reasons why we even bother showing up to our 9-to-5 jobs in the first place.
The meaning of work breaks down into a few distinct perspectives. It really isn't just about earning a paycheck. It carries deep developmental, psychological, and philosophical weight for every single employee. Think about it. From a psychological and philosophical standpoint, work provides us with a sense of accomplishment, social interaction, and even our core identity and purpose. When a manager forgets that their team is showing up for these deeply personal reasons and only focuses on the economic standpoint, that is exactly when things start to break down.
And what keeps us actually attached to our work relies heavily on a few core factors. It's especially about whether we perceive our roles as a true profession rather than just a daily grind. Your position in the hierarchy and how closely your work overlaps with elements of leisure also massively shape your day-to-day commitment.
Moving on to Section 2, the behavior modification trap, how managers try to control behavior. Let's look at how organizations traditionally try to manage all this complex human psychology using something called behavior modification actions, or BMAs.
So the crucial point here is that managers are constantly trying to initiate and reinforce appropriate behaviors. They do this through direct BMAs. Think of your one-on-one performance reviews, a pay increase, or direct mentorship. But they also do it through indirect BMAs. These are those impersonal, structural things like company policies, end-of-year reward rituals, and honestly, even the general motivational language used around the office.
In the traditional model, a manager will use these steps to reinforce good habits. It relies heavily on the assumption that individual behavior is simply a function of its consequences. You observe what an employee does, you apply an instrument like a bonus or praise, and you do it quickly so they associate the reward with the action. I mean, it sounds completely logical, right?
Well, an 18th century philosopher named Jean-Jacques Rousseau throws a massive wrench into this theory. He argued that humans are naturally peaceful, noble savages whose natural virtues, like compassion and intrinsic motivation, are actually destroyed by these exact managerial tools. He believed formal organizations corrupt our goodness by promoting competitiveness, which leads to a truly provocative question. Are those standard performance reviews actually doing more harm than good? Are we structurally punishing our people while genuinely trying to help them?
Rousseau argued that the very act of modifying behavior through appraisals and rewards treats us like standardized products waiting to be programmed. This system literally kills our natural compassion and intrinsic motivation because it teaches us that our value is purely comparative. We start working for external approval from a boss, creating this toxic dependence, rather than feeling authentic pride in the work itself. He believed true freedom at work comes from self-legislation, collaboratively setting our own goals, rather than being manipulated under the disguise of professional development.
Section 3. Production versus people management. The ultimate showdown of management ideologies. This brilliant philosophical critique completely sets the stage for the core conflict in organizational behavior science today.
It's the ultimate battle of two distinct perspectives. Production-centered management treats human labor as a replacement input. It essentially views humans as machines, meant to be pushed faster and harder to optimize throughput, focusing entirely on hard skills. But contrast that with people-centered management. This approach operates on the assumption that human dignity, growth, and well-being are the actual primary drivers of sustainable efficiency. In this model, you realize that long-term reliability doesn't live in a company handbook. That deep, crucial process knowledge is retained in your people.
Section 4. Building people-centered cultures, operationalizing human dignity. Let's dive right into this and look at how we actually put this philosophy into practice during a high-pressure workday.
Building this kind of culture requires shifting away from just technical knowledge and heavily prioritizing interpersonal soft skills. We're talking about active empathic listening, truly understanding your colleagues' perspectives to create cooperative interactions. It requires maintaining a calm emotional disposition and fostering psychological safety, even during a totally stressful, high-stakes Zoom call. These aren't just nice-to-have traits. They are the fundamental mechanisms of how a people-centered workplace actually functions.
To understand how to build this mindset, let's look at the guiding philosophies behind this shift. Starting with John Ruskin's idea that our skills must fundamentally make the work process easier. Simply put, your soft skills shouldn't complicate things. They should streamline your interactions and elevate the quality of your results. That builds directly into Kingsley Moghalu's insight. He reminds us that we simply cannot escape the ultimate consequences of how we blend our technical abilities with our interpersonal treatment of others. You might be an absolute technical genius, but if you destroy team morale along the way, the combined consequence of your skills is a massive net negative for the organization.
And this brilliantly illustrates James Russell's point. You cannot effectively manage a team's psychological safety if you haven't first done the internal work to understand your own behaviors. You literally have to know yourself to grow yourself, and by extension, to grow your team.
George Bernard Shaw rounds out this rapid-fire wisdom by reminding us that people-centered management isn't about perfection, it's about taking responsibility and learning from our inevitable workplace mistakes. A people-centered culture doesn't ruthlessly punish the first mistake. It fosters an environment where learning ensures the mistake just isn't repeated. Section 5. Networking and Organizational Alignment. How work actually gets done. Finally, we have to recognize that people-centered management doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It happens within a complex web of daily relationships.
In organizational behavior, networking isn't just about awkwardly exchanging business cards at a conference. It's the proactive process of using informal channels to get information faster and align team efforts. It's that invisible web of behavioral influence and resource sharing that dictates how work actually gets done, completely regardless of what the official organizational chart says.
Understanding this web of relationships has been a century-long pursuit. It evolved from George Simmel's early sociological concepts in the 1910s all the way to Jacob Moreno literally drawing out sociograms to visually map interpersonal connections in the 1930s. By the 1950s, psychologists like Levitt and Bavelis were systematically researching how the very structure of our communication directly influences group behavior.
The whole goal of understanding these networks is alignment. It's about bridging the gap between what management theories say should happen and what actually happens on the messy office floor. When you understand your networks, you can ensure that people and resources are directed toward the exact same goal, using accurate and timely information. This is where theory is actively revised by practice.
We'll wrap up with this incredibly striking metaphor. As Joseph Sugarman famously warned, the one who volunteers his head to break the coconut rarely gets to eat from it. In other words, blindly absorbing punishment through traditional, rigid management systems just won't yield the rewards you actually want. Every hard and soft skill has a hidden opportunity to dwarf a problem. So what should you take away from this explainer? Will you keep using traditional punishing controls, or will you embrace human dignity to truly transform your workplace? Think about that the next time you log in for the day.